Okay, this is a first for me, but I'm going to just go over the process of how to incorporate a quotation. So I'm going to use the quotation, one of the quotations we had from class today. It was Carson's, which is the first one up there. He's got the page number on it, so the first thing I'm going to do is go through here and see if I can find the quotation, and then I am going to put the quotation down on the piece of paper. It is, they know who I am, and I know who I am. Now, this is a great quotation to think about how we incorporate quotations into our own writing, because it has a number of pronouns. Now, if I just threw this quotation out, whoever is reading my work might ask who they are and who I am. So what we do is, when we do the lead-in to the quotation, which is our own words, we need to think about the context. Where does the quotation fit in? How, where did it come from in the text? All you're doing is really kind of situating that quotation for your readers. So when I think of context, I want to make sure that my readers will know the answers to these questions. So who is saying it or writing it? Because remember, your quotation doesn't have to be dialogue. It just has to be words that are pulled from another text, right, that are written by someone else. So who is saying it? To whom, or about whom. And then I want to make sure that my reader knows the circumstances, like what's going on. So who is saying it or writing it, to whom or about whom, what are the circumstances, and then sort of about what subject or incident or topic. So one of the first things that I really want to look for are pronouns. And those are words, whoops, that take the place of a noun. I, they, he, she, them. Because your reader is not going to know the answer to this. So we know that the I here is Joseph Boyden. And we know because of the article, but also because Carson was clever enough to write it there, the they is an Indigenous women's group. So the question now becomes, what information do I as a writer have to put with this quotation in order to help my readers make sense of what it is and why it's there? So as the writer, I go back, oops, I think I just jiggled the camera. I go back to where I found the quotation, and I find the answers to these context questions. So the quotation is here. They know who I am, and I know who I am. So let's go back and take a look at quickly here what the context of this quotation is. So who is the they? Well, the they here, if we go back, are two of Cheney Wenjack's sisters, right? So that answers the question of they know who. And then who is I? Well, we know in this case, because the author is Joseph Boyden, my name is Joseph Boyden, that this is Boyden. Now, under what circumstances? So when we go back and take a look at these context questions, you don't have to go through and do a chart like this each and every time you do a quotation. But who is saying it? It's Boyden. To whom or about whom? Well, really that would answer this they question. So we're talking about two of Chanie Wenjack's sisters. And that's important because we know that he wrote the book that we are currently reading about Wenjack. So he's using Wenjack's sisters to legitimize the fact that he wrote Chanie's story. So what are the circumstances, or what's this about? Well, in this case, he's talking, let's take a look here, two of Chanie Wenjack's sisters told me not to worry because they know who I am and I know who I am. I know I'm an Indian because someone who isn't couldn't have written the words I did about their brother. So another friend knows I'm Indigenous because Indigenous peoples wouldn't be bothered treating a white person so badly. So he's going through and giving some examples here. So when we think about this, we're talking about the circumstances or what's going on, and that's the allegations that Boyden is not Indigenous. And that's really what the whole topic is. So we know these things now. So let's work through quickly how you might incorporate this into your own essay. You never ever take a quotation and just, as we say sometimes, parachute that quotation in. You have to connect every quotation with your writing through your own words, which means that every quotation needs to be connected to the sentence before it with some kind of punctuation. We use either a colon or a comma for that. So you can just watch me think about the lead-in. So I'm imagining that I am, in this case, supporting Joseph Boyden. So I might say, another example of his acceptance by the Indigenous community comes from Chanie Wenjack's sisters. Okay, so that's the kind of topic of what you're leading into here. Now I want to somehow get this quotation in here in a way that makes grammatical sense, that answers the context clues, and is connected to your own words. So you can say we need the I and the they. So Boyden recalls how these sisters claimed him and describes this connection by stating that, comma, they know who I am and I know who I am. And then you'll put your citation in here and then go on to say these Indigenous women recognize Boyden's indigeneity, and Boyden also feels his connection to the culture. Oh, I don't want to say to the culture, to his Indigenous heritage. So this is how you go about incorporating a quotation. Do you see how this sort of flows grammatically in? Boyden recalls how the sisters, referring to Chanie Wenjack's sisters, and answering the context question about they. Boyden is the I. All right. Boy, the world's just on fire there. Not only did the music come on, but then my alarm came on to remind me I have hall duty. So Grammatically, it flows. Boyden recalls how the sisters claimed him and describes this connection by stating, "They know who I am and I know who I am." These Indigenous women recognize Boyden's indigeneity, and Boyden also feels his connection to his Indigenous heritage. So you have answered all of these context questions surrounding that quotation. Who's writing it? Boyden. About whom? Well, he's talking the they is our Cheney sisters. What's going on? Allegations against his indigeneity, or maybe better, because the article is in support, or not the article, this paragraph will be in support of Boyden. The circumstances is or are that he and others recognize his Indigenous heritage. And by putting it in there, there's no interruption in the grammatical flow of the work. So there's an example of how I might incorporate this quotation from chosen or pulled out by one of our students for a paragraph that is in support of Joseph Boyden.